did say here.
Okay, and we had Human Rights Commission as a presentation. You want to just give an update on that?
Yeah, so actually that they were originally scheduled for tonight, but they have been working with John on a proposed ordinance change as part of the format for them. So they will be actually will postpone this and they will present at the 21st meeting, because at that same meeting, they anticipate having proposed ordinance change for the format of their committee.
Okay, is there anybody who wishes to speak to the council on anything that's not on the agenda? State your name and address.
Hi, I'm Nori Hadley, and I'm a resident of Decorah, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody here tonight. And I'm grateful to everybody for serving the public, and I think some of you are doing a great job. First thing I'd like to talk about is the intersection of North Street, College Drive, and Locust Road. It's a mess, and I think a roundabout would be a great idea, but I don't think there's enough room. So I have a second proposal, which is what I notice when I come to that intersection twice a day, weekdays, and also sometimes very late at night, is no one knows what lane to use when making turns. And I think it would be very helpful to have guidance, because people coming off of Locust Road onto College, which I believe is our only 4-lane street in Decorah, they either pull directly into the center or they pull all the way over to the far right lane. And I think having some lane guidance, painted lines, would help eliminate some of the problems there with congestion. I would also encourage people to be encouraged to use their turn signals. Very few do, and it's hard to be a mind reader at that intersection. So that's the first thing. The second thing, as a member of Cycling Without Age, I'm interested in knowing the status of a blinking sign for pedestrian and bicycle crossing at the intersection of Ridgewood Drive and Montgomery. I believe money has been donated for that project. I was in a conversation with Jeremy Brill regarding that, but have not seen any progress on that. So just want to encourage that as well. And the third thing is, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Minnesota DOT Name a Snowplow Contest, but in case you're not, for the past 2 years, the Minnesota DOT has, encouraged citizens to submit names for new snowplows, and then they offer it up for a vote. And I believe last year they had 60,000 votes. Anyway, the reason I bring it to your attention is because it might be something to consider for the people of Decorah to have some sort of relationship with city vehicles, perhaps not police or fire vehicles, but snowplows certainly, just like the truck that is used to water the flowers downtown is painted brightly and named. It's recognizable. People feel good about it. I think having a chance for people to get involved in their community in that way would facilitate good feelings between different groups. It would be a way for the community to come together behind a project, and it would be simple. And in case you were wondering, this year's winner was Betty White out for the also Control Salt Delete and Plow Bunyan. Those were some of the winners. So thank you. Does anybody have questions for me?
Only Jeremy, can you kind of look into the suggestions that she's noted and then report back to us, or do you have any type of report you want to give us? Which?
Well, I can tell you, I can provide some feedback now if you want. I mean,
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, we paint center lines. I mean, this time of year, I'm sure they're not as easy to see, with sand and material, and the plows don't do them any favors. They'll be repainted in the spring.
Not just center lines, sorry to interrupt, but I'm not talking about center lines. I'm talking about actual turn
Oh, the
guidance
Sure.
lines so that people know when they make a left turn off of Locust coming onto College, that they don't get to just drive down the middle.
Yep, we can look into that. As far as the RRFB, or the rectangular rapid flashing beacon, there has been some money donated. I think it was $2,000 or $3,000. Those cost about 15. So as you know, one of the things we're looking at in this year's street plan is intersection improvements, and as part of that, we plan to purchase an RRFB. So the final location has yet to be determined. That'll be based on council input, but that is one of the locations being looked at. So some money has been donated. It a part of the way there, but I think that is the one that money was donated for. So
The last time you quoted a price to me, I think it was in the range of 8 to 10. That's
that has
gone up that
gone up.
much
It
in
has, yep,
about 18 months.
it has. Yep.
Okay,
Yep, those are but I don't think we had official quotes last time we spoke. So when we talked to electricians about options there, that's the pricing we're getting for materials now. So
okay, thanks.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Consent agenda.
Item A, minutes of the February 21, 2022 regular meeting and minutes from the February 28, 2022 special meeting. Item B, claims. Item C, tax abatement for Kyle Coles, 116 Monroe Street remodel. Item D, consider approval of partial pay estimate number 8 for the Locust Road Improvement Project, with corrected amount being $26,023.98.
Vote to approve. Second.
Moved by Olson, seconded by Luce. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Olson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal,
Aye.
Zergruen.
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Consider approval of change order number 5 for the Locust Road Improvement Project.
Okay, so two portions of this. It is a net decrease of, I know it's $2,914.12, made up of two components. One, removing durable pavement markings based on the time of year that the construction was completed, and replacing that with paint as opposed. That was for a net decrease, but there is also an increase for additional erosion, stone, and fabric control measures and additional excavation on the project. This is recommended by McClure Engineering, the project engineer.
What?
Correct. It is a net decrease of $2,914.12, but there's a decrease and then an increase as well.
Right. Second.
Moved by Chisel, seconded by Olson. Any further discussion?
Just a quick question. And this might be for Jeremy too, or maybe for Travis, but I know that part of the point of the durable line markers was this kind of an experiment to see how well they held up, given that they cost more. I'm curious, do we have any experiments planned with durable line markers, or does that have to be part of the construction project itself?
the short answer is yes, we have been in contact with a vendor about doing a couple trials. So we're still looking into it. We would have liked to try it here, but we still like to do it as an option.
Thanks for the update.
And then my question was, I know that there had been I believe a drafting error in the project that that required some work that was outside of the original contract. And I don't know if that was resolved. And before we vote on this one, I just wanted to make sure that the larger error of omission or whatever had been also addressed.
So this is a payment to the contractor who would have.
Oh, this is a
separate-
Okay,
So
this is
I
not a
would say
McClure
that We
payment?
should address with the McClure payment, yeah.
Okay.
But yes, you are correct. There are some things that need to be worked through that we felt were design errors that resulted in additional cost to the city.
Okay, but this is not
This
that.
is to the contractor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call?
Chisel, Olson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Consider resolution 3250, proposed resolution of necessity for the Decorah 2022 alley improvement project.
Okay, so I'll give a little background on this, but any questions I'll direct to Jeremy with this. This resolution of necessity is needed to assess the adjacent properties for the 2022 alley improvement project. The assessment would only include 4 inches of asphalt, 12 feet wide. This resolution also sets a hearing on April 4th, for which those that are impacted or might have an interest in the project can come and provide their comments.
I'd make a motion to approve resolution 3250 as presented.
Luce would second.
Motion made by Hadley, seconded by Luce. Thanks. Any further discussion?
Just, I'd like to make a note that in my own research on this over the past few weeks, I've done a complete reversal on my inclination. And I actually think that we may be under assessing, given the extent to which these serve the private properties only. I think maybe the train's left the station on this one now, but I would encourage staff to guide the council in a consideration of what we want to do as a status quo in the future. If, if this is something that we do want to look at, changing our assessment percentages, I think it'd be worth having a conversation about best practices before we're in it with the next discrete project.
Okay, roll call?
Hadley,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal.
Aye.
Motion carries. Public hearing on fiscal year 23 proposed budget. You want to make a comment before, or should I just open it up for?
I would open it first. Then.
Okay, I open the public hearing for the fiscal year 23 budget. Is there anybody who wishes to speak?
Has the budget been published so people that can see it?
Right. Yeah, so part of the background, now that the hearing is open, the city has filed all applicable state laws. We've published the maximum levy notice, held that hearing. Then the council set this hearing for the actual budget public hearing. The printed the printed levy was for 1595,691. Again, that's the cumulative city levy, which is not what everybody is taxed at. There is a consolidated levy, including the county, school district, and other taxing entities. But this is us, 1595,691. To this, we still haven't, we didn't receive anything today, right?
No, I have not heard.
No written objections or anything received.
And that was printed in the paper, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments? I'll close the public hearing. Consider resolution 3251 approving the fiscal 23 budget as proposed.
I have one more question. If a person wants access to the full budget, like to see it, can they see that now, or could they have seen it before? Like if they want to see
So which portions of,
like if someone said, I want to see the city budget, I
Mhm.
assume that they can, but do they need to come and see a book like our book, or is it somewhere online that they can see? Or how does that work for the public to have access to the budget?
if they wanted to review the packets, like all the workbooks that council and everything, they could come in and review. We have copies of those in our office,
Okay,
but that doesn't exist as one aggregate
file,
file.
sure.
But next year, right? Next year, we're working toward better
So we are,
communication.
yeah, that was my follow-up. Is then, so next year, is that the goal?
I will tell you, next year's goal is to create what we believe to be easier understood information in the workbooks that can then, I would I would like to, yes, I would like to push this out digitally. I will
And-
say goal one is making sure
And this
that the
can be,
information
and this
easily
is
read.
going to go up on, what we're looking at in Dropbox right now can go up on the website quite easily, yeah? Because it's just a one-page PDF.
Oh, that, yes,
And that's what
Yeah.
was printed in the paper.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yep, yep.
I will say that, I mean, I emailed Carrie a week ago asking for the updated budget electronically and it was very quick turnaround. So if anyone was interested in seeing it, it would have been pretty easy for them to get an electronic version. It wasn't one document, it was several, but I do commend staff for having a plan for more transparent and public facing process that we're working towards next year. And here we are on this year. So that's just how it had to be this year. Thank you.
And I will say the only benefit, or not the only benefit, but a good benefit of having them come down and look at the book is where they're looking at the same thing to answer questions.
Yeah.
Because even Steve and I were having a conversation. It was just so much easier in person because that's why we would encourage someone to come down and spend some time with us so that we can answer the questions.
Sure, that's helpful. I'll pass
And
it on.
it's always
Thank you.
pleasant to hang out with, the folks at City Hall. So
Okay,
there's no motion, I think.
no, there isn't any motion.
Okay.
Yeah, someone,
Oh, who?
No,
Huh?
she closed it.
I closed the public hearing and read the next piece.
I'm not afraid. I just need to find the number. I move to approve the budget as
Okay.
presented.
Resolution 3251.
Thanks. I move to approve resolution 3251.
Lewis with second.
Okay, motion made by Zittergrund, seconded by Luce. Any further discussion?
I have had a little public comment encouraging us to freeze the budget where it was last year because of uncertain markets and inflation. And, I want to give voice to that public comment, that there's obviously people who are stressed in the current fiscal environment and I want to be cognizant of them. But I also just want to say that I think we did our best to be effective with our dollars where we could. And in an environment when the state continually reduces our ability to collect taxes while requiring more and more services from us, I think it's appropriate for there to be a slight raise in a year when the state plans to cut people's taxes. And I encourage people to remember that if they added up their city taxes and their state taxes for next year, they may very well be getting a tax cut, in spite of the fact that the property tax portion of your bill might be going up a bit.
Okay, roll call.
Zittergrund,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal,
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried.
Randy, just because you're the head of budget and finance, can we hear why you said no? Okay.
I thought this would be the right time in a public hearing.
If you must, yeah, like Steve just said, we're in some very uncertain times. This is one of the highest levy rates we've ever had. When we heard requests this year, nothing was turned down except for one truck and, well, let's wait until we get an electric truck. And then the next person asks for a truck, no problem, they get one. There's just too many inconsistencies. There are things that we're buying that we don't need right now. So that's my
Okay.
justifications.
I appreciate that very much, Randy. And I also appreciate if we had those comments and we could talk about those during the budgeting workshops. So that if you have an upset perspective on something that it makes you want to vote no, that we could also work on how do we change this to make it a better? Thank you.
No, I did bring up the truck issues, worked right over it, so not a big deal.
Well, and I think I'll refer back to Travis's comment about working next year. I'm making an attempt to make it more clear. And also, I believe I did hear comments about next year may be different than this year, so.
We can hope.
Okay. All right. Consider resolution 3252 approving a 28E agreement with Decorah Area Chamber of Commerce and Winnebago County Development.
Okay, so this 2080 agreement is very much reflective of the previous 2080. This one is the Hotel Motel Marketing Committee. The agreement itself, however, is with the Chamber of Commerce, Winnebago County Development and Tourism as the executors of the agreement. The proposed 2080 has 2 council representatives and community at-large representative appointed by the mayor. There's other committee members that information was included in Dropbox from their minutes of the last meeting, including their current roster. The proposed 2080 has a 25% allocation of the first 500,000 in hotel motel tax revenues, and based on the discussion from the February 21st council meeting. The agreement proposes for 5 years.
Second.
Moved by Chisholm, seconded by Hadley. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Chisel, Hadley,
Aye.
Sittergruen,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Luce.
Aye.
Okay. Consider resolution 3253 approving the 28E agreement with Decorah Jobs.
Okay, so again, this 28E agreement is the same as the verbiage is the same as the previous agreement with, again, 2 city council representatives. I know at the last meeting, there was discussion about asking Decorah Jobs to consider adding a 3rd council member on that. If there is discussion we had on changing the actual requirement of the 2080, not knowing if Decorah Jobs has gone on. John did briefly talk about the council could make that change. And if Decorah Jobs doesn't add that 3rd person, then John, can you elaborate a bit?
Sure. Like Travis said, there was discussion about whether to increase the city council representatives to 3 and how we would do that because, well, Stephanie's here and I doubt they've had time to amend their bylaws. And if you were interested in doing that, it's not necessarily the best way, but I suppose you could impose it on them that there shall only be this committee if there's 3 members of the city council on their board. And then if they don't follow through, you terminate the agreement. I don't know, that's not necessarily the best way of doing things, but it's an option. Otherwise, you can leave it as status quo or increase. I mean, a simple thing would be to amend the language in the written agreement to increase it to 3 city council members on the joint board. And I guess I'm not sure, and maybe Stephanie would be the better one to explain if there's a benefit of doing it the other way where you get rid of the joint board and you just have Decorah Jobs being the administrator of it with 3 council members.
You know, I talked to Stephanie ahead of time just to give some background and, she can't speak for the whole board, but I think that they'd be receptive to a 3rd council member. The point that she made that I think is an additional question maybe for you, John, that this language seems to talk about a board that currently doesn't exist or meet, an executive board consisting of city council members and the executives of Decorah Jobs. And I think in both Stephanie's estimation, and I agree with this perspective, it might be better to simply adjust the language to reflect that the 3 members of the council are appointed to the full Decorah Jobs board and not have this not meeting committee as part of it. But I guess my question is do you read the language the same way, John, or do you think this executive committee language refers to the Decorah, like the whole Decorah Jobs Board.
The way I read it, without knowing how this actually worked in practice, if without that background, I just read it as Decorah Jobs has an executive committee, like Decorah Area Chamber of Commerce has an executive committee. I do not read it as, and I can see where somebody might, but I do not read it as an executive committee of city council members or anything like that. I just read it as executive committee of jobs plus 2 city council members.
Can we just ask Stephanie what
Yeah.
might work for jobs?
Yes, I think, so I looked back in the minutes when Travis and I started this conversation. I think it was in like 2015, we had made the request to the mayor to appoint 2 council members onto the board because it got to be, I think it was like right around the same time we were talking about the sustainability plan and like everybody was involved in all of these different things. And it was like a lot of overlap. So we're like, hey, let's just bring 2 council members onto the board. And then it took a while because I think Belrich or Dan was stepping off. So he refused to come on the Decorah Jobs because he knew he was stepping down. So Kirk came on and then it took a while for us to get a second person on. But now we have Steve on. So I don't think they would have a problem with having, that's just sort of like what I remember and what I read in the minutes. Having a third council person on there. I mean, if you needed to have something in the 2080 that says like a joint board with the executive committee and 2 council members or board members. I mean, even I think back then it was like a non-voting council position on the board when we had made the request to the mayor. And now they're all voting members and we have Travis on there too. So I mean, everyone has a vote now. We don't really meet on a regular basis as an executive committee because we meet quarterly and or as needed when we have deals happening. So
So do you think that there's that people are open to having 3 council members?
yeah. Yeah, I've talked to the executive
Okay.
committee already. I mean, we haven't had like a full board approval. We meet, I think, at the end of March, I think. And I think they'll approve it at that time. But all of the executive committee are very open to it.
So that would need an adjustment in the 2080 agreement or clarification under.
Right, and you would have to decide whether you want us to come back with a revised version or you just want to make a verbal motion to amend it to have this administered, and that's paragraph 2 of the 2080. What I'm hearing is to be administered by Decorah Jobs so long as they have 3 members of the Decorah City Council
Yeah. and I-
allowed to be on their committee. You know, we don't want to have it go sideways because we failed to get somebody
That's
on
what
the
I was
board.
thinking. Yeah, it could be
Yeah.
like up to 3 or something like that. So just in case someone steps down, it takes a while for someone else to get on because that's
Well,
sort of the situation we had
Yeah,
been in.
and that's where it's tough without having your bylaws amended yet. We
Yeah,
don't,
We can do that.
and I get, if you want 3 members of the city council to be on the board, it should be a board consisting of how would you word that? Including 3 positions for city council members.
Would it be better just to approve the existing agreement that we have published and then amend it later after Decorah Jobs has had a chance to meet in March?
Yeah, and then you guys can, well, I don't even know if we can discuss whether we even need to amend it. Get your 3rd city council member on your board, and it's almost de facto happened.
I
Mhm.
do think it's important for future councils to know the terms of the agreement that was struck, to have it in writing, just
Sure.
given how heavily I leaned
Yeah,
on form.
no, that's a good point.
I
Yeah,
like what
'cause
you said with the idea that there would be three spots for council members there.
Available even,
Available.
yeah.
available.
Yeah, available,
Yeah.
you know.
Up to
and-
3, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
It sounds as if there's general agreement from the members of the city council, although obviously I want to hear if there's not, but I just want to ask this question, maybe this is a question for Travis too. As it's currently written in the 2080 agreement, even though it's not practiced that way, the 2 city council members as part of this executive board have a fair amount of leverage, sole authority over the administration of the money. That's what it says in the 2080 agreement that's drafted. Given this sort of consensus we're coming to, there would be less written authority, influence or whatever. I personally don't think it's a significant concern. I just want to acknowledge that as written, we have strong representation on a board that's given sole authority. And what we're now asking for is just 3 representatives on a very large board. Does that make sense that we're significantly diminishing our official power in Decorah jobs, while I don't think it actually diminishes our ability to influence their work? I just want to acknowledge that that's a change.
Well, it sounded
How mu-
like,
That board doesn't exist though.
The joint committee, I think we had met, like, when I first started in 2015, I remember meeting a couple of times, but then we're like, well, we're all meeting multiple times. And then a lot of these members are also on Winnebago County Development. And then we're doing the sustainability. So it just became way too many meetings and people were feeling a little overwhelmed. So at that time, we're like, let's just make the request to have 2 council members join. At that time, they were non-voting members and we allowed them to have a voting position and so on.
so currently then, if it was 3, then there would be 3 voting
3
members.
voting, and
that
the
would
city
be on.
manager also has a spot.
How many
too.
total members does Decorah Jobs have?
Ugh. I think Winnebago County Development has 22 or 23, and I think Jobs is up there with 16 or 17, I
Okay,
think.
Something like that.
now.
Okay.
I still do think it's right to go to 3 and to get rid of this executive board requirement. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that it was a real change. So Travis, do you have any thoughts at council for us?
One thing I did want to note, if there's discussion on approving this and then amending after bylaws, and it sounds like Decorah jobs, maybe there's been some conversation with the executive, but 2080s need to be recorded with the Secretary of State. And if we could only record it once, that would be great. So I would ask that if council considers approval tonight, please make a verbal amendment to what's drafted.
Is there any reason that we need to get this done tonight, or would it be easier to come back with a rewrite given what you've heard?
It could come back on the 21st. I don't know that it would greatly change the,
To change anything for you
Yeah,
guys?
it expires March 31st, but I guess a couple of things here. One, yeah, jobs might not have enough time to still amend it. But
Yeah.
2, even if this, we go past March 31st, it's not like you have to spend money April 1st.
We are cutting it very close
Then let's
in
not do that.
March.
Why don't we make the amendment tonight in the writing? Then it gets done. It's got to go to the Secretary of State. I don't want to,
Yeah, we
have
have
you
our
guys
next
hanging
meeting
and
on the
being like, what?
22nd. Jobs meets on the 22nd.
Okay.
Do we need to have the actual language, or can I make a motion in the vein of, with new language by John, to make these things
Well,
happen?
for one thing, you've got a motion and a second, so I'm assuming you have to vote on that, or can you amend that
We don't have a
motion?
motion yet.
No,
there's no.
There
motion.
isn't, okay.
Essentially, what we're just asking is to change the number 2 to a
Okay,
3,
gotcha,
correct?
okay.
To
and
the full
remove the
board,
joint
not the
board.
joint.
Yeah.
To the full board.
So it'd be. Right, and so we're getting rid of the joint board
Got
to be administered by Decorah Jobs.
Yep.
And-
Essentially, so long as their bylaws are amended to require,
To include
To allow
3
up
available
to-
spots
yeah.
for city council members on the board.
Up to 3, yeah.
Yeah.
Up to
Yeah.
3.
we got it.
I will make that motion.
Oh, good.
Now we have a motion made by
Who's
John.
put
I'll second it.
I'll make the
After
motion.
Kirk
up.
says it.
Yeah, up to 3 councilmen on the board and
Okay.
again, get rid of the executive board requirement.
And then we have a second by
There was a
Neil.
loose first, I think. 13 people talked at once.
Yeah, I
just-
was gonna say. Okay, seconded by Luce.
and now discussion, yeah?
Now discussion.
Okay. And this is Hadley throwing the wrench. The chamber and development is an easy yes, because it's tourism and it's easily administered and we have visual representation in the Chamber of Commerce, what's going on. It's tourism, it's the visitor center, it's the partnership and whatnot. I know we have discussed in the past that the 2080 can be more directive. And because this is a 5-year agreement, I would like to see something in the agreement stating that for this 5-year period, that our focus is that we encourage housing. Childcare is being taken care of. But and it's not, I'm not asking for a measurable, quantifiable thing. I just want to put in there that, that we would like our economic development group to focus on housing. And I don't know, John, how to the best state that, but in talking to Travis, the 2080 is the place to have this and have it be a reference point. And our people on the board can support that however they want. We can have it work, have jobs work with planning and zoning on best practices or whatever it is. But I think stating a goal, at least within a 5-year plan is a beneficial thing. So I would like to see that in there. And if we can't do that, I will be voting no, because I feel like we should be providing more direction.
Can I ask you a question?
Let's
Wait,
go to John. He asked John.
Oh, sorry. This would have to amend the motion again, but I think this would go under paragraph 4, whether you add another subparagraph or tie it in there. Yeah, I think you just put it in there somewhere.
For everyone else out there, subparagraph 4 just says projects. Then it lists out some generalities: maintain economic development information, conduct ongoing programs to attract industry, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so I just want some clarity because I have no objection to that. I think that's a good idea. My understanding was when we met to discuss these agreements and Jobs was here, we were talking about these things as suggestions, guidelines, or in the 2080. And for some reason, I guess I thought we had it all ironed out that it was that's what we were doing. It was just not here, but in some other form. Do you know what I'm saying? You
I
offered
think-
up
I
like, are
think we
these
s-
guidelines or requirements?
Right.
And we said guidelines. Are you saying now you want a requirement?
No,
No,
Okay.
no,
I'm saying in the project section,
You just
a
want our
project,
guidelines?
I would like to say that the council, within the next 5-year plan, that we encourage housing development. Because housing development is not mentioned. It's economic development, but it's targeted economic development. And I would just like to see it reflected in the plan. Other like more specific suggestions, like working in conjunction with planning and zoning on an overlay to allow smaller things or planned urban developments, like, or I'm not asking for 15 new houses a year or any metric. I just want a goal reflected because it's a 5-year period.
So could we say like high priority area to include housing?
I would just let staff, I don't care how they write it.
Okay.
I would let staff find the best way to write it, but I want housing included in there somewhere.
So that would be, it would include the projects and be like letter F.
If I may, I'm fairly certain based on conversations again with Decorah Jobs that they'd welcome a special encouragement or a prioritization of housing projects. I know that that's something we've already been talking about, and I think putting it in writing is just fine. I have no objection. If we're putting things in writing and maybe now we're decorating a Christmas tree, but I would like it to say housing and downtown revitalization. And if we could have those two things as special priorities, we could use that language for this contract term.
I would like to add though too, that, and not for the inclusion in this agreement, but I think that Decorah Jobs and our economic development officers have been supportive of housing. We have a brand new eco development up in our business park that is lots and lots of new housing. And it could become much, much more. So the assumption that they aren't supportive of housing is misplaced.
I did not say that.
If-
Mayor,
Okay.
may I make an amendment? Oh, so go ahead.
Can I ask one more question about housing? Sorry, I just want to, I'm just, when we're saying housing, are we targeting workforce housing or just housing?
Well, I think I would like to say workforce housing, but given the cost of construction materials and real estate in Decorah, I think just saying the words housing, because with a $40 million expansion in the hospital, it's not just workforce housing. I think the market will take care of things, and we can do things through tax abatement as a council to encourage workforce housing. If you want to say workforce housing, but then again, it's target, then you're
I think it's
being,
targeted.
I have a question because as long as we're talking about it, I mean, to me, I worry right? I worry that workforce housing actually, because of the market, is going to get overlooked because it's a lot easier to build actually right now a $600,000 home and know someone's going to be able to buy it than a, $200,000 home and know that
You
someone's
can't
going to
build
be
a
able to buy it.
$200,000
Right.
home unless you work with Steph and bring up something from the prison industries.
Well, that's why I guess, I think that other housing will take care of itself. I don't think workforce housing would unless there was a direct, like, we want to figure this out kind of thing.
Okay.
So,
I think when I look at the housing, I think of more than just workforce. And so I think it would be applicable to have just the housing, knowing that that's going to be a much broader, not just workforce, but it could be other things too.
I totally get that. What I'm saying is that housing for non-workforce, right? Housing for the wealthy is taking care of itself. It just is, and it will.
Oh, that's fair.
And it is not taking care of itself for the non-wealthy. And that's Decorah's problem. I mean, we can't find workers because we have no housing for people who would work.
If you don't feel it's too targeted and we can, as a council, can agree to that, I'm good with workforce housing in the thing. But when I had mentioned it before, some people didn't like more focus. So I'm happy to say workforce housing if we feel it's appropriate.
I think this is our priority, right? What we're listing is what's important. And to me, downtown revitalization, childcare, and workforce housing.
May I propose language? And if the council seems agreeable, then I can make a motion to amend the amendment.
Okay. I have a
Um,
question.
Go ahead, Mayor. Sorry.
Who made the motion to begin with? With the,
I made the motion
and then,
and I will agree to amend it to include the terms workforce housing and downtown redevelopment,
Revitalization.
revitalization, and what else did you?
That was it.
That was it.
okay,
Now what does my second, will
And
my second
I
do
will
that?
second that. Yes.
all right. Carrie, you want to, what have you got down there?
I'm good with the amendment and so, but Luce, I think we still have to second it.
I did.
because of
No.
Grace, we got to take out.
I did.
Okay,
Oh, I thought it was Neil, I'm sorry.
You did too.
Okay,
okay,
thank you. Okay.
all right. Roll call.
So as a point of order, or right now, the roll call vote is on the amendment, or are we just amending the initial
This is the whole ball of wax.
No, I
Is it a
thought-
Friendly
I
amendment.
think-
basically?
Friendly
Yes,
friendly amendment?
yes.
Okay, I
Think
just
that it
want to make
was
sure.
connected. It's just one. All right,
All right,
roll call.
Johnson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Very good. Consider resolution
Thanks, Stephanie.
3254 approving submittal for revised fiscal year 2023 airport capital improvement program.
Okay, so included in the council packet is a recommendation from the Airport Commission. If the council recalls, back in December, a airport capital improvement program was approved at the time it was presented. We had a deadline. We didn't have an engineer we were working with at the time. And so a improvement program was submitted that showed an airport terminal building and hangar project in 1 year, which had a fairly substantial local match. And we talked about extensively in the budgeting process that that project obviously is not going to advance without prior council authorization, just because it's included in the budget with McClure Engineering. So these next three items are going to blend together. But McClure Engineering did prepare a revised airport capital improvement program that spaces that out over 2 years to reduce the local match, and would also pursue additional competitive grants to bring down that match. And I want to, if the council has what I call the council packet PDF, the 114-page document open, that is going to be on page 45 of that document. So it reduces the local match down to, for that project, less than excuse me. It'd be 81,000, 50,000, and 100, or excuse me, and 34,000. So we're looking at total local match of 160 as opposed to 300,000 that was prepared in the initial budget. That was again, excuse me, those were for fiscal 23, but it would then come back fiscal 24 with an additional 34 and, or excuse me, I'm sorry, that 34 was, that I included in the previous was actually part of fiscal 24. So it's only 130,000 for fiscal 23. And then additionally 34 plus another 50 on the local for 24. So it does still reduce our local match if the council were to move forward on an airport project. It also extends it over a 2-year period.
So,
Page 45.
so overall costs, you're talking a city match would have initially been around 300,000. And now
Yes.
it's looking at more like 180,000 spread over 3 years.
It's spread over 2 years, and the first year would be 130, and then the second year would be an additional 80.
Okay,
So
because
it's
you had said
210.
30 and 50. Okay,
Yep, 30 and 50. There's 2 components in
Got it.
24.
okay, so I just want to say it one more time. So it's a $300,000 initial. Now they want to reduce that amount. So it won't be 300,000 anymore. It'd be 180 over 2 years.
130 plus 80, 210
210.
over 2 years.
Mm.
Now, I'm pointing this out, but adding the caveat that the plan does not obligate the council to do these projects.
And they're not asking us to do
And they're
them.
not asking them to be done yet. I say yet because the next 2 items are the initial steps to get us there.
What if we don't do this project?
So if we don't do the project, that's arguably going to be the next 2 items and not necessarily this one.
No, but still, I mean, I'm asking about the whole thing. What if we don't do the hangar project?
So if we don't do the hangar project, we don't do it. The bigger question that, or thing I would point out that is if the council does move forward with the hangar project and it's not in the plan, then it is not eligible for state or federal grants. That's what this item of the next 3, the key component of this is a airport capital improvement program must be in place for a project to be eligible for either a 90-10 FAA grant or an 80-20 DOT.
So you prefer that we had this discussion and the next 2, not now?
Correct.
Okay,
I
that's fine.
unfortunately I got a little in depth on the dollar amounts here. Don't want council to get too hung up on this, but know that if this plan is not, any project is not reflected in the plan and the council moves forward, it would not be eligible for state or federal funding.
Mayor, I would move resolution 3254 for approval.
I'll second.
Motion made by Luce, seconded by Neil. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel, Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen,
Aye.
Hadley.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Now, which resolution do you want us to have this conversation about on?
Item 14.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so 13. This master agreement is a result of the FAA has a competitive engineering process that you can go through to allow for those services to be eligible for the same grants on a 5-year basis. It can either be done in project specific or on a 5-year basis. The Airport Commission went through this, and that was part of that whole in limbo timing. McClure Engineering received the highest scores from the Airport Commission. And so this master agreement simply says McClure Engineering agrees to provide the airport services for us, and we're going to ask McClure Engineering for their assistance. And it specifies that no project shall advance, no billing should be done unless a specific task order is generated and both the scope and the price are agreed upon. That gets us into item 14. So 13 is just the master agreement for 5 years
With no financial
with
obligation.
no financial obligation. 14 is where we get to the financial obligation.
Hadley will move 3255 as presented.
Luce would second.
Motion made by Hadley, seconded by Luce. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Hadley,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Sittergruen,
Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Consider resolution 3256 approving task order number 1 with McClure.
Okay, this is the one that gets into the financial obligation. This would be the first steps, the initial steps to getting a shovel-ready project for a terminal airport project. All FAA and DOT grants are received on a reimbursement basis. So those initial costs are borne by the city. And then those grants, you receive they call it a go letter, that yes, this project qualifies, you receive your go letter. The city incurs those costs and then submits the grant reimbursement request. So this specific task order would be for McClure Engineering to conduct the aeronautical survey to make sure there's no potential danger to air travel as part of this project. Also includes the McClure to conduct a CADX, which is basically it's coordinating with SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, to make sure that the grounds that the proposed project would not require an additional archaeological survey. If one is required, that would be a separate task order. I will say that should not be the case, considering the proposed location is an existing hangar. So since it's already been disturbed, it should be fine. The total cost of this project would be not to exceed $23,490, which would then be applied to a 90-10 FAA grant, bringing the city's local match to $2,349. Now, I emphasize most because if the CADX comes back with a finding that requires a public hearing, that is $4,900 based on the task order. So then that is part of this not to exceed. If that public hearing doesn't need to be held, the total cost of the city are going to be less than $2,000 after a reimbursement. Again, this would be the initial steps taken to getting airport hangar terminal building shovel ready.
Luce would move resolution 3256.
Do we discuss first?
Well, you have a motion. But if you don't have a second,
I'll second it for discussion's sake.
motion made by Luce, second by Zittergruen. Now discussion.
Okay, so just in lieu of Randy, you voting against the budget, I'm curious, I mean, this is a $300,000 in our current budget, right? Project. I guess I asked the question, how badly do we need a terminal hangar? Because I look at the things that we did fund, whether it be roads or water or sewer or our park pool. To me, I have not been convinced that if we're trying to save money, that this isn't where we could save money. I guess I'm curious if others feel that way.
I have been, up there at the invitation. I've been up there a couple times at the invitation of the airport group and of the manager up there, and have heard multiple times from different people, that building is, going to fall apart, or it's at the end of its service life. And so I've had experiences in the past where people just kept repeating a thing until it became true. With regard to maintenance of buildings, I served a church where we couldn't ring the bell anymore because the bell tower was going to fall down if we did. And it turns out when we got an engineer out to actually answer that question, that was just a thing that people said to each other. And I personally would feel a lot better about even considering this kind of major capital investment for the city, even knowing that there's a ton of likely federal matching dollars that would follow it. I personally would feel better considering it if we actually knew for sure that the current building was at the end of its service life, that this wasn't just a thing that we say to each other. Because if we could fix the weathering issues, if we could put some new steel footings, I don't know, I'm not the engineer, but if for me, it's really important to actually know if that's true before I start this process.
That would be where I'm at as well. I mean, I think that's my biggest question. I was up there. I mean, I think it's great what they do up there, but I'm not sure in terms of impact on Decorah and cost from the city. And I want to know that the building really is like at its last leg. And this is a really good idea to do right now.
Travis, you've been involved in those discussions since you've been up there.
I will
What's-
say nothing that a structural engineer's come in and to that effect. All of it's been
just
anecdotal,
conversation?
as Stephen had pointed out.
I think with some of the improvement that has been done up there, there is more plane traffic going in and out of there that does have effect on the economics of the city.
Of which they have their own hangars, right? I mean, that's the other thing is that they
Not
have
all
their.
of them.
No, not all of them, but they do. And again, I would want more data to make this decision.
Well,
I
what
agree anecdotally, it is, people will tell you it's great on the city. I don't know that I have seen data to actually support that.
What would be needed to get the type of data she's looking for?
I would say additional funding to hire a structural engineer to come in and evaluate the site.
I guess what I will say is that those are steel buildings that were built in, Randy, were you on the, you weren't on the, it was,
Yeah.
okay, so they are over 20 years old. The life of a Morton building, we are on the edge. They are not, they are shelter. That's about it. We do not have an area for people coming in who are transient pilot traffic, not based here.
How many people is that?
Well, we can get the logs because we have the flight records and whatnot, but I don't feel like $2,000. We're going to spend more than $23.49 on a structural engineer to look at a 20-year-old Morton building than we are to approve this. If we want to have this conversation about the airport, about hangar rent, I'm all in, but not necessarily about this one as it relates back to grant funding.
And do you think, I guess the reason I want to have the conversation now is like, how far do you go down the rabbit hole before you, like, I realize this amount of money is nothing. I'm not worried about that.
Right.
It is the rabbit hole question about, and I would love to hear from you, Randy. I mean, you're the one who said that we have to make sacrifices and not do things. And so to me,
area of the city too. There's a lot of flights that come in here that go down and use parks, go to TG, they come into town. There's a lot of business traffic out there. I know quite heavily to fly in and out. And Stanley, my boss used to use it. At his pilot's license. So there are economic impacts of people coming in.
again, I'm just curious because I mean, everything we voted on in the budget has that implication as well, right? So to me, this is you are the one who brought up, like, something has to give. So I'm still push back at that.
No, I agree with, because it does bring people to town.
And I also think it's looking at the initial interface with our city. And we show them a dilapidated steel structure as something that we want them to, oh, see what a good town we are, how good we take care of this is our public coming to visit. This is one of the gateways. And it's a significant gateway because it is persons of business and economic activity. And so I think it's just the next step in stepping up our game.
I think it's important that we look at the gateways to our community, but that we look at them with an eye towards the proportion of people who enter the community via those gateways. If I were to go to Toppling Goliath and ask every single person who walked through the door whether they flew to visit, I would say that it'd be, maybe a couple a weekend. versus the hundreds and hundreds who come to our town via more traditional means. So I think we need to be honest with ourselves that if we're considering going down this path, it's the city investing money that provides a service that is only used by a pretty small percentage of the people who drive business and revenue and visitors to our town. And those people tend to be disproportionately, extraordinarily wealthy compared to the average person. I personally think that those are important things to keep in mind as we're, evaluating whether this is the most sound investment for the city of Decorah. I know that a structural engineering analysis costs money. I don't actually know if we're on the order of thousands or more than 10. I really just don't know. But this is again a situation where if we could spend, $100,000 to make what we have look better, grant supported, to make it work for the next 15 years, then I personally think that that would be a wiser course than, spending 220,000 in a way that just benefits a few.
But I know if you go back to Ross's comment about how old that building is, that's huge.
Yeah, I think it's just recognizing depreciation of a building that's not engineered to have the lifespan in which it has. And it's not out of some of our work that we've had to do in the last 8 years as far as building maintenance was because of deferred maintenance work. This is simply a matter of the life expectancy of a tin shed, which is now over. And we have an avenue to fix this. But I agree with the gateway concept and recognizing that it is a limited group. But to Steve's point, being the head of economic development, he does understand that the front door that those people are coming to may be less than.
I
And
think
so
too-
I think it's good that we do
I
it.
think too that there's not often that you get the opportunity to get the type of federal money to be
Yes.
able to put in a new building
Yep.
compared to another.
We have to look at this as a bridge.
Mhm.
The bridge, bridges were structurally deficient. We identified the structural deficiency. We had some upfront money to build the bridge. And then the feds matched it and we were able to get our bridges done. I think because federal grant money is here, I think not taking advantage of it would cost us more in the
I-
long run to
I-
replace it by ourselves.
I don't disagree. I really thank you, Steve, for articulating what I was not articulating well. I do think we have many bridges that need repair. And I get that sometimes it's easy to look at the really shiny one that a few people cross because someone's going to give you money, but we still have to invest money in that bridge, which means we won't be able to invest money in something else, for Randy's point. And that's all I wanted to have that discussion. I think that discussion is important. It is not that I'm not going down the road of not supporting this project. I just want to know that we have really thought about this project because of what Steve articulated so well.
Okay,
Can I ask a question? Is the timeline on this super urgent? I mean, do we need to act now or we might not get federal funds?
The only slight delay would not be an issue. I want to start there. If council wanted to revisit in 6 months, there is additional, the BIL funding that's identified in the ACIP. That is additional COVID related funding that is airport specific. And so that does have, that is 159,000 for the next 3 years that must be spent at the airport, nowhere else. So that's funding that we have to have a project. I know this sounds bad saying it this way, but we have to have a project at the airport of at least $159,000 to use those funds.
And then my next question is, it seems as if our current hangar only really makes sense in all of its capacities because we are lucky to have a manager who's also an airplane mechanic. How convinced are we that that is a replaceable person?
I can't say that there is a convincing argument that that's going to be the case. That has been brought up. And so the thought is, somebody brought up transient air travel. right now, there's not a place. If you fly in and visit Decorah, your plane is sitting outside on the, not on the taxiway, but on tarmac. Yeah. And so the thought is if Mike goes and retires and we're not able to replace with a mechanic, that becomes actually transient parking.
Okay, that's actually helpful for me to hear because I'd be worried about building for capacity that we may not be able to staff.
That was the thought, is if it's not replaced with a mechanic, then it serves that purpose.
Well, I, given that it seems like there's no huge rush and I personally would like to see the case made that the current building isn't rehabable at all. I plan to vote no, and I'm just explaining that in advance.
Any more discussion?
If it could come, I mean, if we
Okay.
could get some, it wouldn't have to be 6 months that we came back to it, but I guess I would like some of that information before we spend money on it. I mean, is that something we could get? I mean, is it a structural engineer or is it a,
I think even if you had an insurance adjuster,
yeah, I
look
mean,
at it and be like, are we at the end of life expectancy on this?
that would give me at least more information than.
Yeah, I
Than the
mean,
bell that actually probably works, right? I mean, I guess I really need to know that we're,
There, I believe there is one out at the airport every once in a while that might be able to give us numbers on that. So
Well,
to that point, that could also potentially be something done, because this just popped into my head. The aeronautical study and the CADX, if there's additional work that's disturbed in the area for any kind of rehab, and if the roof is redone, I believe the aeronautical study still needs to be done. So there are components of this that I believe may have to still be done if a rehab project. were
I
to
mean,
come
I'm
up.
okay voting for this, but I guess I want to know.
and
that-
the other projects that were listed 1 through 3 still have to come back to council for approval one way or another anyway, yeah?
Uh,
That we already voted.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So this is the prequel. This is the pre-work for the bridge work. This is the soil boring to making sure that the new bridge can fit, or like, this is this is prerequisite work, yeah?
I guess I understand that now. I appreciate Ross's point that it's prerequisite. As long as it would actually accomplish something that we would need anyway if we were investing in the building, I'm willing to go this far. I guess, if staff wants to encourage me to go farther down the road on this funding, I'm gonna want numbers about the current facility.
And
And I also encourage council to remember that when we invest in new capital, we're permanently adding money to our budget because we have to take care of it and then we have to replace it at the end of its life. And that's something that we often don't pay attention to.
And I want to add, if we could find an insurance adjuster who is not connected to the airport, that would be helpful. I mean, I think everyone at the airport is going to tell me we need a building at the airport.
Does this come actually from the airport commission?
Yes.
And are they a group of disinterested people, or are they supporters of Decorah's airport?
They are supporters of Decorah's
they
airport.
are supporters of Decorah Airport.
And they have any thing besides stories back and forth about this building looks old? Or are they basing their decision on the usage they've had in the structure and in the airport and moving it on toward being a best scenario for Decorah?
I think if I understand the question correctly, going back to, talked about, now I can't even remember the term I just used. Anecdotal evidence that was provided. Talk about water, when it rains heavily, water actually seeps in from underneath the sides of the building. And the door, actually the front hangar door, is a retrofit. When the building was initially constructed, it had a narrower doorway. However, to fit modern aircraft in, they had to cut the building and retrofit a wider door in after the fact. So a couple anecdotal stories along those lines. Is that answering the question?
I think the commission saying that this is something we should get started on and recommending it to the council for action holds weight, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and it's not the first time we've discussed this. I mean, we've discussed this in the past as far as the replacement due to the fact that the building is aged.
Having known Mike
Mm.
Connell for, probably 25 years or more, I don't think he's going to make up a story that this building is having issues unless it actually is. So I think it's probably something that's in need of, reconstruction or putting up a new building. So I'm definitely for this idea.
Okay. Roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal,
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
I want to go on record. I'm not against it. I just I'm not there yet. I need more data. So I don't want people to somehow think that I'm against this project. I'm trying to honor what Randy said about a budget that we've said no to nothing. And so I think if we're to look at something, then we look at a bridge that is less traveled than a road that is traveled by everyone.
I think, the other thing I want to encourage council to do is, if there's something in town we want, we go and look at it. Please go out and get,
I have looked at
no,
it.
I know, I'm
Oh,
not saying you
okay.
didn't. I'm not saying you didn't. But take the time to go out and look, and get information and become more involved in that. So that when it comes around again, because it'll be coming around again, we have more information.
I think
to go.
the difficulty, Mayor, is that not only have I seen the airport, I've driven multiple roads in Decorah, right? I
No,
live on a
I'm
road
not-
in
Emily,
Decorah. I'm just
I
saying
under-
that
I
I
understand.
don't need to be, I feel like I'm being chastised for
No.
raising a question about what
Emily,
is
no,
important.
I'm not chastising.
Okay.
Okay, let's go on. Okay. Consider ordinance 1288, amending chapter 1344, stormwater management ordinance, second reading.
Okay, again, while we still can, because the state hasn't approved their legislation, this stormwater ordinance would increase the commercial size from a half an acre lot to 1 acre of disturbed soil. So changing that definition for areas that would trigger the ordinance to be in compliance with. And then residential from 2 acres down to 1. Again, picked 1 acre because that is the limited requirements for the state of Iowa on stormwater protection when you have a construction project. If you're going to disturb more than 1 acre of soil, you must pull a stormwater pollution prevention plan or a permit, and that plan is part of that permit. We would also require the city receive a copy of the SWIP, and this also creates a hardship waiver, if you will, that for specific areas, they could apply to the city engineer to be exempt from requirements because of undue hardship.
I'd move 1288 for second reading approval.
Second.
Motion made by Luce, seconded by Olson, for ordinance 1288, discussion. Hearing none, roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal.
Move to waive third and pass or adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made to move, pass and adopt by Luce, seconded by Zittergruen. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Zittergruen.
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Chisel, Neal.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Motion carried. Tree board, we have a tree opening. We may have tree openings, but tree board opening, Tina Hall is putting in a resignation. They're moving out of town. So I'll be advertising that and I will put it for, I'll leave it open till the second meeting in April. No, wait, I can do it till the first meeting in April, because we still have one more meeting in March. So that would be on April 4th, meaning they would have to have the application in by,
Before then.
right, the Thursday before that April meeting.
I would say March 30th would make it a little easier,
That sounds good.
but 31st would be the last day of the month. It might be easier to remember. We can have a spot saved on the agenda for as a placeholder.
That's a-
31st
Just so
could
they
be
get it
fine.
in by the end of March.
Do we have a meeting on April 4th?
No, no, we don't. Okay,
Yeah, we do.
here
Wait,
going
second.
on. Building code discussion. Travis, do you have some information on that?
Okay, yes. So I've had a couple council members request this item be placed on the agenda for discussion. Did want to preface today's discussion with, I brought it up at the last council meeting. Right now, there are two bills out there, both at the file level. So Senate File 2361 and House File 2527. They very much mirror each other. And those two bills, as are proposed, would require cities enforce the state building code and only the state building code, no more, no less. So those are both currently alive, and with them being in both the House and the Senate, and since they both mirror each other so well, if I were a betting man, I would put money that this is going to advance. This is going to probably be voted on this session.
So I guess I'm interested in knowing if that is the case, what do we have in terms of creative leeway with enforcement of what and can we, I mean, with our own building code, we can make some amendments or adjustments or like, okay, or you can file a special hardship of whatever, right? Can we do that if it's a state building code enforcement thing?
So if the question, you're talking today, right? Pre this legislation.
Well, it does seem like we can make amendments to our own building code, right?
Today,
Today.
yes.
If the legislation passes and it's a state enforced building code, then at a local level, can we prioritize how we are going to enforce a code? I mean, so there are lots of laws.
I want to make sure I have a clear understanding, like you're saying this prioritize as in look at this, but don't look at this.
Or we're going to focus on looking at this. Like, I mean, right? I mean, communities say we're going to focus on looking at speeding in this area. And we put a lot of energy into speeding in this area, and we might not be looking at speeding in another area. Because no one can look at all laws at all times.
Right.
So there is community focus on, right? So if we say we want to focus on fire prevention in our buildings, can we direct our code officer to say, we want you to look at fire prevention in buildings? Or windows, or like,
As part of that inspection process, though, he would have to, I mean, there are going to be things that are going to be evident as other components of it. I would be concerned if it's, we want to prioritize this, fire code, but not electrical, or we're going to prioritize plumbing, but not energy efficiency. Because those are the four: plumbing, electrical, energy code, and
but we don't look at electrical code, right? That has to be a state certified inspector that comes in and does electrical anyway.
right. So electrical is a state required, life safety, fire code is another, because there are today current requirements of state building code as well that the cities can adopt to enforce that level more or less. This would require that cities could only adopt and enforce the state building code. So the state building code currently exists today,
Isn't that, I feel like that's what we adopted, isn't it? I mean, they are the.
more or
yeah,
less.
Our code
There
is
are
that code.
some variations thereof. I say more or less because for example, the state electrical code. City of Decorah has adopted the 2015 International Electric Code.
Building code.
Well, there are multiple
Got it.
different kinds of codes. The City of Decorah has adopted the 2015 version. However, the state of Iowa has 2020 as their building code. The IBC, the International Building Code of, which was referenced, both the City of Decorah and the state have 2015 version. So when I say, yes, we more or less are in line with the state building code, there are a few variations thereof, and included in the council packet was a table that John put together to show some differences between the two.
A follow-up, if the state were to pass this building code that requires every municipality to adopt and enforce it, does that mean that, does every community then have to hire a building code enforcement mechanism, or what's going on?
I want to be clear, we'd have to enforce, we wouldn't have to adopt. But if we have a building code, we could only enforce the state building code.
Is this similar
Oh.
then to the stormwater management thing where we just can't go any further than what the state calls for?
No, this one even says you can't go more or less.
Or more or less? You have to do
You would-
exactly as
Yes,
So-
if you are going to enforce a building code, it must be the
Okay, so-
state's building
No,
code.
just really, I
So-
want to make sure I understand your answer. So you're saying that if this passes, the two options for communities are no building code and no enforcement, or the Iowa building code and they have to enforce it, no more, no less. Is that what I'm understanding?
From a city perspective, yes.
Thank you.
I do want to add one caveat. The contractors would still be required to build to the state building code. Now, there would not be anybody to do those inspections as part of that.
This is without a building inspector.
Correct, yes.
But code enforcement is open to interpretation. I mean, well, okay, I mean, but you have said that before, that, well, your code compliance officer will interpret the code this way, and that's what you need to do.
There are certain scenarios that even our city code
Is open to
is
interpretation.
open to interpretation, yes.
Right. So a city could have a interpretation of code. I wish I had a concrete example. Let's take some of the things we're dealing with. Firewalls, sprinklers, right? The size of the building. Whether or not a basement has to be included or not. Those kinds of things. Some of those are gray areas, right? Maybe not.
I look at the specific building.
Okay.
Some of them are very specific. Like how many, where the exit egress window needs to be in a bedroom. Greg, I defer to Greg on this, but very much a layman in any of this. Looking at it, it's pretty specific, but I'm sure there's exceptions, that there's some gray area where it's up to interpretation.
So maybe we should look at what we wanted to discuss, Ross's ideas, which I think are good ones for the code, for amending our own code. And could we make those are those something that couldn't happen if it was the bill passes?
Correct. So there are, what Emily is referencing is Councilmember Hadley had 4 points that he had suggested that we consider, one of which, so one included that a common ingress egress could be used for second floor residential, I think was the way it was termed, or maybe it was just residential. That is something that can be done, but again, it's going to depend on, this is to where John said it gets specific, that if the distances are such that you can have a common ingress and egress, but you might have to have two of them because, and this is where I'm going to have Greg help me out probably a little bit here. Yes, you can have common ingress and egress, but that sometimes isn't going to be just one. There might be instances, especially on a second floor residential, where you're going to have two. Because if a fire's in the stairwell, that's your common ingress egress. They got to share a second way out too. So that's one of the questions brought up. Let's see, another included mechanical, HVAC, electrical plans, requiring separate ones of those. We don't actually, those can be as-built. So contractors come, pull a building permit, and then the HVAC, electrical, plumbing can all be designed on, design build. Thank you. The other two.
Can you explain
were-
that term just for those of us that aren't contractors?
Design build is, Greg, you want to take it? You could probably do a better job than I. I'm not a contractor either.
Yeah, design build is basically just a term meaning you rely on your subs to come up with the design. They work with the homeowner or the architect or whoever's managing the project, and they come up with a solution for those items. So like the mechanical, he'll just work directly with the GC on the project to come up with that. But we've never, ever required mechanical, electrical, and plumbing drawings.
So like if I'm Joe Q homeowner and I'm building a house and I'm there while they're framing it, I'm like, you know what? I really want to put an outlet up here on the wall in my bathroom so I can mount a TV there. Yes, did that in Humboldt, but I can do it on the fly because we don't require those kinds of.
As long
those
as you did
kinds of drawings.
GCFI, right?
Right.
If it's within 6 feet of water, I know that much.
So the reason that point specifically came across was that in presentations to the council about the economic non-viability of some projects within the C3 district, it was the cost of engineering and drawings and everything. And it wasn't clear to the owners what was required of us. So you're saying, or what I'm hearing, is that we do not require our certified engineer drawings in those categories.
Correct.
Okay.
So they don't need to hire an architect to do these things.
That has nothing to do with an
That's-
architect.
That's different.
Yes, what Ross talked about are the separate plan design.
Plans. Okay.
And I think it's helpful to start where Ross is at and not right in the middle of the weeds in terms of specific fixes, because I think we can talk about the problem and then ask for solutions. I feel like some of the issues that we're facing as a city in these matters are going to exist whether or not the state of Iowa changes the code. And so I do think there's valuable conversation to be had right here and now about how we can, do better. My concerns about the building code or the new one as we interpret it, as we have to enforce it, obviously, is that it seems to right now operate so as to freeze our downtown development in its current state, where a change of use, where incremental development, where people investing in their properties, where ownership groups wanting to buy a property without spending however much money it takes to bring it completely up to code, that those things are not attainable by people. And I'm deeply concerned about that because the strength and vitality of our downtown is built up out of generations of people doing those exact things. If we are in the future going to rely on people who have deep pockets to come in and spend, $50,000 to $100,000 on 3 or 4 different things just to bring their old building into compliance, people are going to respond the way that we have been warned now by 2 downtown building owners that they will respond, which is they'll regret buying. They'll build, out in the business park or out, at the edge of town. And that's not a recipe for a healthy and vital downtown. And I think to the extent that we can work within the law and the code to work with our downtown developers, including ones without the deep pockets to just simply figure it all out on their own, I think we should find ways of doing that. I don't think that there's better uses of city staff time than helping people invest in our downtown. And I think that that's not, I'm really not up here like pointing fingers. I'm up here saying that the way the code's currently working isn't working for the city. And I think that we can do better. And I think that that's going to be true whether or not the state of Iowa changes the code.
Travis, what's your recommendation as far as, because that would require an ordinance change, which is 3 readings and whatever, but what's your recommendation as far as working through some of the concerns that these people have?
Right. So one of the difficulties surrounding this, I mean, even the 2080 discussion we had earlier today, and that was fairly simple. We were able to make 1 or 2 revisions on the fly. When we start talking about building code, I did ask Greg for reference to the stack of books you see in front of Greg today. That is the state of Decorah, excuse me,
Yeah.
city. We're seceding. Had
Okay.
enough.
Always wanted to.
But is the city of Decorah's building code as adopted by reference. So we talk about 2015 building code, residential code. So that is Decorah's code right now. To go through that and pull out what can be pulled out from state code, because state code even does have some revisions, not a lot, but they'll say we adopt the IBC 2015, except chapter 34, section 12, where we replace it with this. So it's going to take some time. I need council to at least, if we are going to make changes, assuming that we can, and neither one of these bills is approved, I need council to say, this is what we want to do. We want to remove a fire sprinkler component. We want to remove different ones so that staff can go back, reference those, reference state law, and come back and say, yes, we can, or no, we can't.
I see what you're going to say. So he's going to compare that to state. Well, because my question is it better to look at the state code and do it that way? If we think these are going to pass, can we look at the state code and see how that affects our current concerns? Because if having to switch to that state code is going to get rid of the current concerns, maybe we're already going to be, it's not. Okay.
No, state
That-
code is very close to what we have.
Okay.
There are a few variations, but I don't think it's going to address some of the concerns some of the council members have.
Okay.
So would you have 2 or 3 council people work with you on that, or what's your suggestion?
Let's see, second funnel is coming up
18th.
the 18th of the
March.
month.
That's a week from Friday.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Or do you want to, sorry. Let's say that the state code goes through. Does the city have a way in which they can enforce code on we talked about this with like how to bring your house up to code, right? We're like, okay, you have to do these things by this date, this by this date, that we could work with a building owner and say, okay, by this year, you need to have this done. By year 5, you need to have, or 3, you need to have this done. Year 5, you need to have this done. Like, do we have autonomy to do graduated requirements so that it wouldn't fall on someone to have to do it all in their first year? That's the interpretation part. See, that's
That may be possible. I'd have to look at that and see what the building codes say, and to add confusion when we refer to building codes, that it can have more than one meeting, but we'd have to see what it actually says in there for the review and approval process. I don't know, without looking at it and digging into it, if there's a timeline imposed, or before you issue this type of permit, you got to meet this type of requirement.
because our ordinances, right, spell out what the consequences are. I mean, for other things, nuisance properties or things like this, I would assume we also spell out the consequences for your building not being up to code. But if you've met with the code compliance officer and you've done these things this year, like you have a code plan, can we develop code plans?
Well, it definitely sounds like we're going to be discussing
Is
this
the
more as
thought
we
that
go on.
if we amended ours before everything goes through the funnel and gets passed and everything, that we would be set because we're already in our ordinance? Okay.
Can't
that's
amend
what
it. We can't amend it. Right.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think it's a fruitful use of the council's time to talk about specific fixes to the building codes right
Yeah.
now. I do think it's fruitful for us to consider how we can make sure that people who want to invest in our downtown can get clear answers to their questions without having to commit to a final plan. Because if, both of the downtown businesses that we've been in conversation with, have some specific questions that I think it is within our city's capacity to answer. And I don't think they've experienced us as being very helpful. And my point is not to like sit there and say that how it's been done is bad or whatever. My point is simply to note that has a really, it won't be great for our downtown long term if we can't find a way to do better answers for people, because specific questions that we could answer but we're not right now, that the OTS Indie Pops group has. If they decide not to have a tenant, are sprinklers still required? What constitutes a kitchen? I mean, those are questions we should be able to answer. Could they simply clean the front up and operate a retail business with no kitchen in the back? Would that be permissible? And I get that isn't something that city staff wants to spend a lot of time doing, that we can't help every single builder and homeowner in town, plan their kitchen. I get that. I do think that we need to realize that our downtown area in particular is a special case. It returns so much value to the city in terms of property taxes per acre. It's our most fruitful ground, and it's worth the extra investment of making sure that we see ourselves as a resource for people who want to invest in it. I don't think we need to dig into the law and make changes to do that better.
Well, we'll have you keep us informed, especially in the coming days or, in the next week, as far as where these are at. Is there anything else you need from the council?
I agree with Steve. I do want to know about enforcement. I mean, I do want to know what the requirements are in terms of, can we make a graduated enforcement?
That's gonna have to take some research on our end.
Right. But I mean, regardless of which code we use,
Mhm.
I'm curious about that.
Okay,
I'm a little concerned that if we start, changing, how we enforce or what we enforce in the Iowa Building Code, that we would open ourselves up to some liability if there were any kind of accident. So let's say the city of Decorah decides, well, we're not going to make people put a sprinkler in this building that they're rehabbing. And then there's a fire in the future that is very destructive. Where does that fall on the city going forward if we don't just stick with the state building code, period?
Right. I'm not saying that. I mean, I think even in the state building code, a city has to have you have to be up to code in this way by this time, right? I mean, it's a little bit like we were talking, I can't remember what we were talking about, where we said, if you haven't done it by here, I think Greg asked us to come up with if you haven't done this by then, I want to be able to charge you this fine. And if you haven't done it by this fine, I want to charge you this fine, right? I just want to know that if they have a plan, I'm not looking at saying we don't put in sprinklers or fire prevention type things, but I just think that there's a way in which a person can bring their building up to code that works both economically and safety wise.
This whole thing brings to mind too, I have some questions about just how many buildings really are even sprinklered downtown. How big of a problem do we have?
Yeah.
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 And that's,
In it.
We have a disparate barrier to entry for people who want to start a business compared to all the people who are already operating businesses. And I think that's a significant issue that we need to keep working on. This is obviously one part of a long term.
and if necessary, then maybe that's what we start to do with our economic development funds, right? If we're going to be tied to a code that's going to require huge influxes, that we have a grant, essentially a revolving grant or loan program through the city, that if you need to put in these expensive safety requirements in downtown buildings, we're going to help with that being our focus. I mean, that's what we've all said we need to do.
Okay. I'm going to move us along, knowing that this is continuing open for discussion. You'll bring more information back about the legislators and then also about the grid, the information that she had requested. Okay. City manager, department heads, and council reports.
Okay, so again, legislatively talked about those two building code bills. There's also a new one out there. I didn't get a chance to relay this one to staff. So MFPRSI. Yeah, I thought you'd perk up. It as it's currently proposed, it would increase the cost and additional exposure to the city. So this is House File 417. Does I would put the city at a disadvantage if that bill were to advance.
Okay, tell me that again.
House File 417,
Okay, and it's related to?
the municipal fire and police
Oh,
retirement
there you
system.
go, okay.
So there's that piece of legislation, the right-of-way conduit management, still very much alive, both, again, yes, this is one that the Iowa League of Cities actually pushed out to contact your local legislators about. Two bills, House File 2296 and Senate File 2189. Again, very much replicate each other. The concern, there's two main areas of concern. One would not allow for a city to require a utility to go into city-owned conduit or a joint trench setup. It would prohibit the city from requiring those. It would also, there's language in there on non-discriminatory use of city-owned conduit, which is the largest concern on our standpoint, is what does non-discriminatory use mean? Does it mean that we have to allow for, Joe Q citizen to start up a fiber ring in Decorah and go in our conduit? The same we would allow at the same rate and everything we would allow another provider. So there's some concerns on that front as well. Local option sales tax, while not in the tax bill that was approved and signed into law by the governor, it is believed to come back as a standalone. So local option sales tax might come up in its own standalone provision to, again, change from 6% statewide to 7% statewide, and then distribute back to communities. Again, chief concern there. The Senate discussion included taking that additional 1% in sales tax would then be used to fund the voter-approved water conservation. About 10 years ago, the state of Iowa had a vote to amend the Constitution to include this excuse me.
Yeah, they've never
provision.
funded it.
Thank you. And it hasn't been funded yet. So the thought is the 7% would then fund that portion, and then the general fund, state general fund, would then make up the rest of the 1% allocation back to cities for now. So in the same year that we're seeing the first reduction in backfill as it's being phased out from previous legislation adopted less than 10 years ago that said, we promise cities we will make you whole. Never mind.
That's right.
Now this is on the table again. So paying attention, watching for that to come out. In better news, I've had several meetings with various partners, Winnebago County Medical, Luther, met with President Ward, Chamber of Commerce, Winnebago County Development Tourism, continuing that. Downtown Betterment, their annual meeting is Wednesday, March 16th, I believe at 7:30 in the morning. That I am not apparently, I did get voluntold to.
Well, you're on the agenda.
I am. So I'll be presenting at the Wednesday, March 16th at 7:30, their annual meeting that is open to everyone, is my understanding. I will be discussing the city issuing that RFQ for the North LA Business District. We actually received 5 responses back for consideration. And so very happy with the responses that we received, and did reach out to a number of individuals to help assist in preliminary review, looking at scheduling some interviews so that we can then come to full council and say, school officials, business officials, city representatives have reviewed these. here's all 5, but we are recommending company X for the project. That's my report.
So have you put together, that group is already in existence?
So I have established it. I will say I am looking for possibly one more council member that wants to be interested. That I was kind of looking as a past / current business owner, and
Yeah.
if you're interested,
Yeah, that'd be good.
perfect.
Okay, Carrie.
Our new hire will be starting on the 21st. And then also one of the things that we've been waiting on is a wage survey from the Iowa League of Cities. It has been held up, but I did get information today that they're hoping it'll get released towards the end of the week. So then hopefully, once we get it, we can set a personnel committee and start looking over that.
Thanks. Anything from department heads?
I'm pleased to share our new strategic plan. I know you've heard me talk about the library going through a reaccreditation process multiple times and have seen it in Travis's updates. That's something we do through the state library every 3 years. There are a number of components to that process, and one of those is to go through the work of creating a new or an updated strategic plan that you then submit with your application materials. So I'm really pleased with the plan that we came up with and that the board recently approved. It's in the Dropbox for your review. Be really happy to talk to you about any element of that you have questions about or that you're interested in. Anytime, feel free to reach out. We will be doing some publicity about the plan, probably not in the level of detail that you're seeing in the Dropbox, but enough to help the public understand what some of our work is going to be sort of focusing on in the next 3 years. I did send it to our state library contact prior to submittal, and her comment back to us was, wow, that's really a lot. And we said, yes, it is, and we're keeping it all in. So want to really give some kudos out to our staff who really put a lot of time and effort into it. It wasn't just myself working on the plan, but I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. And again, be happy to talk to you about it anytime.
Anything else?
Just real quick, I wanted to share that about a week ago, we found out we did receive the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship Water Quality Initiative Urban Conservation Program grant.
Good.
which-
I'm sorry, could you say that one more
Nope,
time?
nope, once was all. If you can say that, you get the grant. No, it was the project, our partners, Northeast Iowa RC&D, Winnebago County Conservation, Sunflower. So it will involve a constructed wetland just south of John Deere Implement and Wicks Construction along the new or proposed dry run trail. It will be include a bioretention cell at the new Sunflower facility, as well as hopefully some reestablishment of some prairie within our levee system here in town. So grant was about $96,000. It's a 50-50 split. If you recall, we are submitting some cash as well as some in-kind contribution, primarily in engineering design. So one bioretention cell is a fancy rain garden. It's basically a low depressed area with native plantings that has an engineered soil mix to promote infiltration through the deep rooted plants and the high infiltration soil. Pretty simple system. Just looking at it, looks like a low depressed garden. So, and
Very
then the other thing real quick, the Mill Street, Water Street intersection, you may have noticed, is not currently operating. I am told after speaking with the contractor this morning, we believe it'll be up and running this week. There are a number of items that went wrong, actually starting back with the power outage we had a couple months ago and getting parts. We had some other issues this past week, but it should be up and operational hopefully yet this week, at least temporarily, until we get some of our other items addressed. So.
Very good. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, John.
So we were notified by Ben Steinis that our voting precincts have to be redone, state mandated. From what I can tell, it's not that we did anything wrong. They just didn't like it. And what it gets down to is what I can get from reading it is there are a lot of requirements. And of course, you're trying to balance a lot of different requirements. But the one they seem to focus on is a city is to have as few supervisor districts as possible. And this is kind of a chicken and the egg type situation. We have no part in designing where the Board of Supervisor boundaries are, but I guess our precincts affect that. And so we are basically losing a voting precinct. This will not affect the wards. So it really has no effect on city council positions. The long of the short of it is the state of Iowa has told us what we need to do for new voting precincts. I haven't looked in detail at the legal description, but it divides, I think, Ward 3 into two precincts. And then we had an agreement with the county for sharing voting precincts. Well, that's going to be revised, and now we will only share one voting precinct. I think it's Ward 1 with the county. Again, it's more affects the county auditor level, commissioner of elections, than it really does us, except for the fact we have to pass a new ordinance. And really, since I haven't talked to Jeremy about this yet, but because our ward and precinct ordinance is all together, we have to uncouple those. And the ward legal descriptions will stay the same, but now I envision maybe doing two ordinances, one that's just ward that really won't change anything where the wards are, but then also a new ordinance for the new precinct boundaries. And then also we'll have an agreement with the county for the new precinct sharing, which I think the Board of Supervisors were voting on today.
So didn't
Oh, next week. Okay.
the state drew the boundaries, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that doesn't change our wards.
Does not change the wards. It's only the voting precincts.
Mhm.
But, for efficiency, we thought it would be nice to have our wards and precincts be the same thing.
Can we change our wards to do that?
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
No, that's already been approved by the state, so I don't think we can.
So,
Yeah, and I don't even know, I'd have to look at it to see if the way the new precincts would be done, I don't even know that you could do that, because our wards have a population requirement and, a certain tolerance that we have to be within the ideal. And I think, I don't know that you could accomplish that with the new precinct boundaries. I mean, that's such, that's a whole, yeah. Yeah, I guess, I don't think we can change the wards at this point. Yeah.
Well, question to you, John, because I did pose a question similar to Ben, that I was trying to get rid of anyone or anything like that. But ask Ben if the districts were to, because I believe at least one council member has brought up, the makeup of wards versus at large. If it's two supervisor districts that have to, they say they want to go with the fewest and it's two. If it's 4 wards, so if we were to change not the form of government, because a form of government has to go in front of the general public. But if the council were to want to change from 5 wards, 2 at large, to 4 wards, 3 at large,
Yes.
would that, that was Ben's response, honestly, that would help on his end, but he then did urge council should do what's best in their, fully vet it, do what's best for council. But I don't know if that's an option.
I think, I would love to know more about that. I've made the comment, I think everyone should run at large, but this would be a good compromise in that regard.
Yeah, maybe that would be possible. I mean, really, the precincts are kind of the important thing after the census. But you have to go through the whole ward redistricting too.
Yeah,
Jeremy
we
shaking his
can
head.
look into it. I think that the puzzle pieces, I would be extremely surprised if we can make it that clean, because now if the precincts are set, that limits us and what we're allowed to shift around. But I mean, I'm happy to look at it, but I don't know what the process would be. But I'd be very surprised if where they drew the precinct lines matches up with.
Right,
making our wards
but we
simpler.
could decouple it, right? And then go to 3 at large and 4 wards?
Our ward requirements will still be the same, right? We have to have within the 1% and all that.
Right,
And it's all based on how the precincts, which are not equal puzzle pieces, right? We had this.
right.
So again, it might be possible. I don't know. I'd have to look into it.
And it would take, what would that do to the election cycle and all that to make that change? Would you have to do it, over a 2-year period or a 4-year period, or what would the requirement be? Curious.
I mean, I think, go ahead.
For the wards?
Yeah, to change, to go from 5 wards to 4 and go to 3 at large.
Yeah, I don't recall off the top of my head what that is.
I mean, I think with the
I
number
don't
of us being
necessarily think
reseated.
that would be a bad thing either. I'm kind of with Emily. I think an additional at-large vote wouldn't be a bad thing.
And then just,
I mean, the next election cycle is going to be a big one because many of us are being unseated anyway. So I guess I wouldn't worry about the next election, but I do think that each one of us looks beyond our ward so often. Our town is small and smaller, and I think at-large positions are important. So to me, I think a 4-ward, 3 at-large would be good for Decorah.
I don't think there's any point in arguing about it until we know if it's possible. Otherwise, we can just say, let's plan on looking into this in 2030. I would appreciate it. Well, that is the next time that the maps will open up, right?
Right.
So I would encourage staff to at least put a little work into seeing if this is possible. If it would make Ben's life easier, if the council wants it, then we can move forward. But there's no reason for us to argue about it unless we know we can do it.
John, why don't you keep a kind of look into that and then keep us posted on what you find out?
I will.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, Randy?
Okay, well, I'll let Kurt talk about our meeting last week. I'll talk about the chamber meeting.
Okay.
Big thing there. Again, we're working on the gala next Friday night at Impact Coffee. Gonna have a live auction. Tickets are on sale now, so go down to the chamber and get your tickets. We got 4 new members in the last month joining the chamber. So we're moving forward. People are open back up again. And I just want to give a shout out to the Viking basketball team and good luck tomorrow night in Des Moines. It's exciting times. I got to go to the last one. No, I don't. That's why I write stuff down. The All Vets Club, Pet Containment Systems, Plunkett's Pest Control, and Driftless Yoga Festival.
Interesting.
No, I was a freshman in high school.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Randy. Anything else?
Nope. that's it.
Emily?
There'll be a Sustainability Commission meeting, not this week, but next. Is that
Yes,
right?
on the 16th.
So I can report on that at the next meeting. Otherwise, nothing tonight.
How about you?
We got back from vacation in time for this weekend and we went to several of the films that the Oneonta Film Festival had. And I would have to say that each film was better than the next. It is a wonderful thing that the city of Decorah has. Most of the people I talked to that were in attendance were from out of town. So I'm sure it brought a lot of money into the city of Decorah. And I would encourage us to push that as much as we can for next year and for everybody to keep attending to it because it was a wonderful experience.
Thank you. Steve Luce?
So, well, Smith had a meeting, but I was unable to attend.
Yes, and I actually did attend. And, well, so did Travis. Let's see, you gave a report. They asked about the recycling containers and stuff, and you gave a report on that. You gave a report on the RFP for planning. Trying to think, were you working with the hanging baskets? Did you do anything with that? Okay. They're working at getting it set up for the hanging baskets for the summer, but maybe going with somebody else.
You mean not
Let's
having
see.
people do it?
Hmm? No, it was the,
Oh,
yeah, like the greenhouse. Can you think of anything else they talked about?
I just note they did approve $6,000 distribution, I believe, for the baskets.
I think so. Okay,
Nothing else, Mayor.
thank you. Steve Zadigan.
Two things. The first is that related to the MU task force. We had a meeting of late. The council approved to acquire legal counsel. After that, the task force worked with the city manager. We hired an attorney named David Lynch with the Brown Winnick Law Firm in Des Moines. He was the former general counsel of the Iowa Utilities Board. So he said to someone that would mean he could work cheaper because he doesn't have to, get up to date on the relevant case law. After some conversations, he suggested that submitting some reply comments to the board staff would be a good idea to answer Alliance, in his words, repeated mischaracterizations of Decorah's data request and the complaint. The task force members, in order to save money, drafted comments, and Mr. Lynch then reviewed and made some suggestions and then approved. I just wanted to make sure this is all in the open and in the public. So Travis is I guess been emailed the substance of those comments, and I think you said that seemed to be within the charter and the authorization that the MU task force has been given. So the Community Listening and Education Committee is continuing to work on educational presentations by leaders from various Iowa municipal utilities. They have leaders from 3 MEUs willing to present and are talking with another couple to finalize the lineup. Alliant and Me Energy will also be invited to present to us. Dates are being finalized, and we're hoping to begin that later this month or perhaps in early April. That's the update. And then the other thing I just wanted to say was I also went to the Oneota Film Festival, and it was a great move for them to come downtown. I think it was a good decision on their part, and the venues were outstanding. It was really a great city event.
Thank you. Ross.
Mine's a little more of a personal reflection. I have been in the process of closing down Amundson's after 54 years. I've explained to lots of people that the change is occurring because of changes in distribution at corporate levels from suppliers. So change is the basic theme, but the downtown film festival was a great change. Impact Coffee, T-Box remodeling, the work that was done to create those venues, the change that was done to create those venues is an awesome thing. In wrapping up the business, I've had lots and lots of people come through and talk about change, but we also have to remember that there were 5 men's stores at one time in Decorah. Changes occurred. There used to be horses back behind Water Street. There were stables where Fairway is. The races at the racetrack used to be horses. Things change, and as a council, if we can just support change and work to make commercial infill a viable thing and keep our downtown strong, I think it's a great thing. I've had 8 people contact me about the space where Amundson's is. And I know there's some other businesses that are going to be changing, but if we can encourage downtown development like we are in the 2080, I think it will just be beneficial for the strongest tax base of our community. So thank you for everybody that came in and bought stuff, and for the support over the years. On that note, I've also been working with Jim Martin Schramm, looking at the city of Perry. City of Perry, and Kirsten, I know you got copied on that too. And as part of the North Alley look, there's a possibility for solar downtown, big solar downtown. And it would be change, and it would be different. But I think as we look to opportunities and whatnot, that we not be afraid of change, but embrace it and look at it as beneficial. So just like horses used to be back there, or the garbage dump or the river or whatever it was, if we look at whatever the driving force is, we should embrace change.
Thank you.
All right.
Kurt.
I have a few things from Hotel Motel meeting on Thursday, February 24th. there were a number of events that we're sponsoring or participating in. One is a canoe copia. I believe we had paid our fees for 2020 and then it was canceled and then delayed. Canoe copia is a huge event in Madison, Wisconsin. That's a outdoor recreation event, and Decorah had a booth there a few times. They allowed us to move our payment back till next year when it goes back, probably hopefully full steam. We also attended the Midwest Fish and Wildlife Conference this year. We'll be attending the Iowa Tourism Conference. Jess mentioned that there were a number of award nomination categories and that we have nominated the Driftless Yoga Festival, Rubiot, and Luna Valley Farm for various awards. Well, I guess we'll learn more about that later. Probably the coolest thing about the meeting was a video that we were shown. It was created, I believe, by the State of Iowa Tourism Group. It's called Soul of Iowa Drone Video Series. And sometime when the weather was really nice in the early fall, they brought this drone in and they flew it around town. They flew it over trivia night, I think, and they also flew it right in the front door of Impact Coffee, up the stairs, and then out the window of the retail shop up on top. It was very cool. And but apparently we have about a 2-minute video that's available for us, that will be available for us. And I think we didn't have to pay anything for it. We were selected one of like 1 of 4 communities. Okay, so we were just lucky enough to be selected because we are a tourist hub. And that video will be available to us to use after April 19th. In the meantime, they're talking about maybe doing a video watch party somewhere where we can have, people in the community that come and see it as it gets released. So that's something to look forward to. We changed our contract from a company, our visitdecorah.com, our IT contract, from a company called Medium Giant to Running Robots. Running Robots is an Iowa City company, I believe. They feel that they're going to get more responsive attention by SWIT making that change. They talked a little bit about content creation, page expansion for Run Decorah, a Decorah Farmers Market page, and then also Decorah history pages. They're talking a little bit about the Altfilish information out there, schoolhouses, and other architecture, including the stone mill or stone mills. And then we had a couple of winter guides that just came out. One is a snowmobile trail guide. I got 4 of them here, and they are essentially maps as well. And then this is a winter activity guide. So grab one and pass them down. I think Brandy's got some on his end too. And I think, then we just kind of went over all the other events coming up. Owning at a Film Festival. There's a Bluffs main event in March, Women's Weekend out in April. Decorah Farmers Market starts up again in May. Driftless Yoga Festival in June. We talked about our 2080 agreement. And we also had a kind of a wide-ranging discussion about downtown signage and wayfinding.
Good, very informative. Thank you. Okay, we have, I need a motion to go into closed session. Is that how I work with that, Travis?
Everyone's ready for closed session. No other action to follow the closed session. I'm stressing that because if you leave now, want to hang out, more than welcome. The couple will before they adjourn, but that is the only option they have after closed session to adjourn.
So actually, the room has to be cleared, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So
Thank you, staff, everyone else.
let's do about,
You got a motion by Randy to enter closed session.
okay, motion by Randy,
Second.
second by Olson.